Hello there, silly little gay people inside my computer. I hope you all are having a lovely day. I am doing pretty alright. Been a little bit sick the last few weeks, but now I'm finally starting to feel a little bit back in gear, so that's good. Today we're going to be talking about another recent game release, Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, which just came out last Thursday at the time that this video will be coming out. And I have some things to say about it, because I was initially very mixed on this game when I first tried it out. I thought it was like getting off to a very slow start. I was not impressed. I thought it was a pretty big disappointment compared to Age of Calamity, which is a game I liked a lot more than most people did. Honestly, now that I've gotten a bit more into the meat of the game, I think it's a lot better than I initially thought, and I'd actually say it's better than Age of Calamity in a lot of ways, and we'll get into that in a sec. But like, first of all, let's just go over my history with Age of Calamity a little bit. The big thing everyone complains about with Age of Calamity is, oh, it's a non-canon game, but even though it was pitched as canon, and it's like, one, I don't even think it was actually claimed to be canon before the game came out. Anyway, but then there's also the fact that like pretty much everything until like the midpoint of the game when the champion descendants come back in time was pretty much like still you could consider it canon. There wasn't too much that diverged before that, so like I don't know, I think that they told the story of what led up to the Great Calamity, but then they just kind of like realized, oh, this isn't enough to make a whole game out of, so let's add a little bit extra, because we don't have the cast and the numbers to make a full Warriors cast either. Anyway, I still like that story a lot. I thought it was a fun alternate narrative, but obviously my main complaint was like the performance, which is like the obvious thing everyone goes to when they want to criticize Age of Calamity. That game did not run well. I think that's pretty obvious. Obviously, being on the Switch 2 now, that's pretty much gone. That's a non-issue with Age of Imprisonment. There's still been a few like frame rate dips, but like very few and far between. I can only think of like 2 specific moments. And honestly, it's just so nice to finally have a Nintendo Warriors game that runs at a stable 60 FPS. It's so nice. I love that, like, because, like, I mean, you know, frame rate's a lot more important when it comes to action games like this, and so it's nice to have one that finally runs at a consistent 60 FPS. Anyway, no major spoilers for Age of Imprisonment so far. I'm about 10 hours in. There will be spoilers for Tears of the Kingdom, because, I mean, spoilers for that game. Sonia's already died at the point that I'm in. She dies pretty early in the game, and I've just unlocked the Rito and the Zora sages. So I'll be showing a little bit of their gameplay and talking about them a little bit. So if you don't want to get spoiled on their designs, you should probably skedaddle now. But on that note, I want to talk about the gameplay first, because I think that's where this game is really the most interesting to me. First off, there's a lot more like original characters than you might expect, but like somehow not at the same time, because like when you look back at like Tears of the Kingdom and the way they define all of their characters in that like era of the Imprisoning War, it's really only Zelda, Rauru, Sonia, Minoru, and then Ganondorf. And then, of course, like, you have the Sages, but, like, they didn't really have a character back then. So, you have a lot of Oseis in this game, like, way more than you'd think. Even just, like, minor soldier characters that get to be playable, even if they're not, like, super relevant to the story, which I think is really fun, because, like, what they kind of did is they split Link's different weapon playstyles into a bunch of these, like, standard Hylian soldiers, or, like, soldiers of different, like, races, like the Zora and the Rito. The Hylians obviously play the most like Link, but, like, even then they have, like, their own, like, little neat twists on it, because, like, you have Typhon, who's, like, a Hylian swordsman who plays a lot like, you know, Breath of the Wild Link, except he still has, like, this neat mechanic where it's, like, most of his attacks, if you hold down the special button before letting it off, it'll, like, charge to different stages of that special attack, and it's really interesting. And then you have like some of the Zora and Rito ones, which just use those, like, they're just generic Rito and Zora soldiers that don't have a ton of character for them, but like in terms of gameplay, they're really fun. They were able to get really creative with them. Like Lago, for example, he's this like Zora swordsman I unlocked. He might be one of my favorite characters in the game to play as, just because of how damn fast he is. Like, he's very much like, I don't know, he feels like if you took Marth from, like, Fire Emblem and Smash Bros., specifically his Smash Bros. Playstyle, turned him into a fish, and then set him into a Warriors game. Like, that's what his playstyle feels like. Ironically, not all that much like Marth played in Fire Emblem Warriors. And then, of course, when you're speaking of other Link-like playstyles, you have the Mysterious Construct, which, like, that's the big thing a lot of people are talking about, because they're worried that it's going to mess with the game's storyline and make it non-canon again. I don't know if they're going to do that or not, but regardless, like, this is the most obvious parallel to Link, because his moveset is pretty much identical to Link in Age of Calamity, complete with the swapping weapons out to use them, but they add some really unique mechanics to it where it's like, it has the fuse ability. This construct has the ability to fuse any of the Zonai devices you collect to its special attacks, and you can swap out specific Zonai devices for specific attacks. And it grants those different effects of those Zonai devices, and it basically lets you make a custom character in a Warriors game, which is insane. That's awesome. That's so creative. And then like you have the ability to add different enemy items and like horns and stuff onto the end of your sword and swing it at your enemies, and then like just completely obliterate their weakness gauge based on the strength of that item. And it's so cool. They clearly had a lot of fun making this character, and because of that, it's one of my favorites to play as, without a doubt. The other neat thing is, like, because you have the mysterious construct with the fuse ability, a lot of the other, like, major characters that are not, like, any of the sages, like the core Rauru, Zelda, Minoru, you have, like, each of them with one of those core abilities, because Minoru has auto build, Zelda has recall, and Rauru has his ultra hand stuff. And so they each have one, and it makes me wonder, like, I wonder if they're gonna add a character that uses Ascend later in the game. Like, I don't know, that seems like a weird pick, but it'd be funny if they did that. I think it'd be funny. And that said, like, the chemistry mechanics with the different Zonai devices, which is the other, like, big addition to this game, are really, really good. There's, like, 4 different categories of enemy attacks that they can do that, like, you can interrupt. There's, like, projectiles you can reflect, there's a charge attack, there's a jump attack, and then there's, like, armored enemies. And so each of your Zonai devices, except for, like, the elemental ones, has one of those things that it can break through. Or you can use a character-specific ability, but those character-specific abilities, A, have to be unlocked, and B, each of them has a cooldown that you can use, and you can only use one every so often for the character. Kind of like how the Sheikah Slate worked in the previous game, but it gives you that alternative, whereas in Age of Calamity, you would have had to wait for that Sheikah Slate ability to recharge before you even had a chance at hitting the enemy's weak spot again. They fixed that issue for me, because you don't have to wait now, you just have to determine, is it better to knock this enemy off guard now, using a Zonai device while I'm still waiting on my cooldown? Or do I save my battery for later? Because the battery is very much a limited resource in the game, which leads into my other big complaint in terms of, like, limited resources, just because, like, I think the difficulty of Age of Imprisonment could really use some work. For context, a lot of the time when I'm playing a game series that I'm experienced with, like these Nintendo Warriors games, I typically play the highest difficulty, and seeing that very hard was unlocked from the beginning on this one, I'm like, oh, I'll play very hard. Which, I mean, like, yes, it's kind of my own fault at this point for the issues I'm about to get into, because I'm playing on that difficulty. But it's a bit of a criticism I have for the games industry as a whole when it comes to designing difficulty levels into your games. Because, like, what the Warriors games do is, like, this kind of artificial difficulty, if that makes sense. Instead of making the game more difficult through game design, they make it more difficult through, like, just resource management, where it's like, oh, you're just not going to get as many health pickups, or, oh, all of your enemies are going to have, like, twice as much health. I really hate that kind of difficulty scaling. It's kind of just, then you end up at the point where it's like you're reloading from a checkpoint, and you only have, like, 2 hits worth of health, and so you have to figure out how to beat this boss with 2 hits of health left because the game didn't provide you with a chance to heal. Like, that's not a fun kind of difficulty. Other games besides Warriors do this too, and I have the same problem with them in those, where it's like Freedom Planet 1, like, hard difficulty on that, pretty much all that they do is like double the amount of damage that enemies deal to you and, like, double their health, which it isn't fun. That's not a fun kind of difficulty, and it sucks. But aside from that issue, one other major complaint I had for this game, and that's kind of like what we started off the video with, was like, the tutorial for this game is long. You're like 5 hours in, and you're basically still only playing as Zelda, Rauru, and Minoru, which, when the core, you know, conceit of these Warriors games, especially the Nintendo Warriors games, is having a large cast of characters you can play as, it's really disappointing when you're stuck with just those 3 characters for, like, 5 hours, like, till the end of Chapter 1, and you really don't get a chance to play as anyone else except for Calamo and the Mysterious Construct for, like, a single level. It really sucks. It's super over-tutorialized. That almost made me, if I hadn't played as much as I did before this video came out, I would have had a much more negative impression of the game. But because I played more into Chapter 2 before I made this video, I'm finally getting into, like, okay, this is what I wanted to see out of an Age of Calamity sequel. And I'm really happy that they did that. I just don't know why it took that long to get into it, especially because this is a sequel. You shouldn't expect to have to tutorialize everything so much, because you can assume that a lot of people played the previous game if they're buying your sequel, but whatever. But, like, after that point, when the game really kicks into high gear, there's some really interesting stuff going on in that story. Like, for example, there's, like, a Dark Link. There's, like, this evil version of the Mysterious Construct that's, like, corrupted by, like, Ganondorf's malice or whatever. And it's really interesting, because it's, like, we haven't really had a Dark Link in any of these Breath of the Wild era games, and it's interesting to me that we're finally doing it. And I think that they're doing it by pitting it against the Mysterious Construct, which is obviously very Link-like, I think is really fun. It's a really great story decision. And then you have like the 2 sages that I have unlocked so far. Kia, who's the Zora sage, she's fun. I like her, and she's also very pretty. But I don't know what it is with me and the Zora ladies. But I'm a goddamn gay ass furry, and yeah, you can make of that what you will. But then you have Rafika, he's really fun, and he's like this scheming archer type, and of course he's voiced by Joe Zija, so hello Claude Von Regen Fire Emblem. And then you have Calamo, who's this like little Korok, who's like looking to put down roots somewhere. He's honestly way more fun than I thought he'd be, and he's voiced by like ProZD, so like good for him. But it's like he's a really fun little character. I didn't expect to like him as much as I do. And then also there's this fun theory that my girlfriend told me where it's like, I don't know if this is true or not, so potentially spoilers, but like because he's like looking to put down roots, the theory is that he might just be like the Great Deku Tree. I think that'd be cute if he ended up being the Great Deku Tree, and that's just, you know, hundreds of thousands of years earlier. And I can't get much more into the story because it hasn't really gotten fully going yet. Like I fought the first 2 like of Ganondorf's 4 like archfiends or whatever, but I haven't really gotten into a lot of the story. I still don't know how the 2 major parties of like Zelda and Raru's team meet up and team up with Calamo and the Mysterious Construct's team, but I'm excited to see how that works out. And honestly, like, yeah, I am really impressed with the game so far, and it's finally getting to a place where I'm like, okay, I see where they're going with this. Anyway, that's really all I had to say on this game. Thank you for being so patient with me working on my longer form videos in the background. There's just been a lot going on in the background where I've been like stuck re-recording the audio for one over and over and over, and now I finally have a cut. I've also been learning a bunch of new editing software recently because my university kicked me off of my Adobe subscription because they finally realized I'm not a student there anymore after like 7 months. So, all that said, it's been a little bit getting me back into making videos consistently, but hopefully some of those longer form videos should be coming soon. Thank you all for sticking with me all this time. I like making these smaller videos in the meantime, just to keep you all held over, and also to just talk about games that I don't really get a chance to talk about on the main channel all that much. Most of this I usually talk about or stream on my Twitch, so if you want to see more of that, go follow me there. It's Kit the Goddess, same as YouTube. Anyway, I'll see you all next time for whatever video ends up coming out in another 2 weeks. It'll either be the narrative video I've been working on, or it'll inevitably be about Hazbin Hotel because I've been hyper-fixated as fuck lately. Anyway, you all have a lovely rest of your day, and bye-bye now!